Nobody wanted to help the dying Apache until she heard his final secret. The desert town rested under a wide sky that never seemed to end. Dry wind moved slowly across the sand, carrying dust through quiet streets lined with old wooden buildings. Most people who lived there had known each other for years. Outsiders were rare, and strangers were often watched carefully. Life moved slowly, shaped by routine and old habits. Every morning began with the same sounds: trucks starting, doors opening, boots stepping onto gravel, and voices greeting each other with familiar comfort. On the far edge of town, beyond the last row of houses, stood a small, weathered cabin. It belonged to Tala, an Apache woman who lived alone. Many people knew her face, but very few knew her story. Some said she came from a proud family that once held strong traditions. Others whispered that she had walked away from her past after something painful happened long ago. No one agreed on the truth, and over time, rumors replaced facts. Tala lived quietly. She woke before sunrise each day, stepping outside to watch the sky change colors as the sun rose over the desert hills. She moved with calm patience, as if listening to something deeper than the world around her. Sometimes she gathered herbs near the rocks. Sometimes she carved small pieces of wood into simple shapes. Her life was simple, but it held meaning for her. The townspeople kept their distance. Some avoided her because they did not understand her traditions. Others believed old stories that painted her as different or mysterious. A few were simply unsure how to approach someone who seemed content with silence. Children sometimes stared at her when she passed through town, curious but unsure whether to speak. Despite the distance between her and the town, Tala noticed everything. She watched how people interacted, how laughter faded into worry during hard times, and how kindness sometimes hid beneath rough words. She never judged them openly. Instead, she carried her thoughts quietly, like stones in her pocket. One afternoon, as the heat pressed heavily against the land, a traveling trader arrived in town. His truck rattled as it rolled into the small market area, drawing attention from locals who gathered to see what supplies he carried. Traders often brought news from distant places, and people listened closely to their stories. Tala had come into town that day to exchange herbs for food. She stood near the edge of the gathering, listening without interrupting. The trader spoke loudly, describing long roads and changing weather, but eventually his tone shifted. He mentioned an old rancher named Daniel who lived far beyond the hills. According to him, Daniel was dying, alone in a house that barely stood against the desert winds. The news spread quickly among the listeners. Some shook their heads with quiet sympathy. Others remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Daniel was known in town, but not loved. He kept to himself and rarely visited. Stories about him were mixed. Some called him stubborn. Others said he carried anger from old times. Whatever the truth was, nobody seemed eager to help him. Tala felt something stir inside her when she heard his name. She did not know why. She had seen him only a few times from a distance. A tall man walking slowly beside a horse, his face hard like stone shaped by years of weather. Yet hearing that he was alone in his final days unsettled her deeply. As people continued talking, excuses filled the air. One man said he was too busy. Another claimed Daniel had pushed everyone away long ago. Someone else suggested it was not their responsibility. The crowd slowly returned to discussing other matters, leaving the subject behind as if it were too heavy to carry. Tala finished her exchange quietly and began walking back toward the edge of town. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the sand. Her steps slowed as she thought about the trader's words. She understood loneliness well. She also understood how easy it was for people to turn away when something felt uncomfortable. That evening she sat outside her cabin watching the sky turn orange and purple. The wind carried distant sounds from the town. Laughter, engines, and dogs barking. She closed her eyes trying to quiet her thoughts, but Daniel's situation returned again and again to her mind. In Apache tradition, caring for the vulnerable was more than kindness. It was a responsibility tied to balance and respect. Even when someone had made mistakes, compassion remained important. Tala remembered elders speaking about how every person carried a story that others could not see. Night fell slowly, bringing cool air that replaced the day's heat. Stars appeared, one by one. Tala stood and walked inside her cabin, lighting a small lamp. She prepared a simple meal, but found herself unable to focus. Something felt unfinished, as if the world itself was waiting for her to act. She packed a small bag with water, herbs, and basic supplies. Her movements were calm but determined. Without announcing her decision to anyone, she stepped outside and looked toward the distant hills where Daniel lived. The journey would take hours. The path was rough, and darkness made it harder to travel safely. Still, she began walking. The desert at night felt different, quieter, deeper. Every sound seemed louder, from the crunch of sand beneath her feet to the distant cry of an animal. The moon provided enough light to guide her, casting pale shadows across the land. As she walked, memories surfaced from her own past, moments when she had felt alone, when strangers had shown unexpected kindness. Those memories strengthened her resolve. After a long time, she saw the outline of a house ahead. It stood alone, leaning slightly as if tired from years of standing against storms. A broken fence surrounded the property, and old tools lay scattered near the entrance. Tala paused before approaching. She listened carefully. The wind moved through dry grass, and somewhere nearby a loose piece of metal tapped softly against wood. No voices, no movement, only silence. She stepped forward slowly and knocked on the door. There was no answer. She waited, then knocked again, louder this time. Finally, a weak voice came from inside, barely strong enough to reach her. It sounded surprised, almost disbelieving, as if the person had forgotten what it meant for someone to visit. Tala opened the door gently and stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and neglect. The room was dim, lit only by faint moonlight through a cracked window. On a narrow bed lay Daniel, thinner and weaker than she expected. He turned his head slowly toward her, confusion and curiosity mixing in his tired eyes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The distance between their worlds filled the silence. Tala placed her bag down quietly and moved closer, offering water without asking questions. Daniel accepted it with trembling hands. His expression softened slightly, as if he could not understand why she had come. Outside, the desert remained still, holding its secrets under the night sky. Inside the small house, two strangers faced each other, unaware that this meeting would begin a story that neither of them could have imagined. A story shaped by truth, hidden history, and a final secret waiting to be spoken. The small house felt heavy with silence after Tala entered. The air inside carried the smell of dust, old wood, and time passing slowly. Moonlight slipped through a cracked window and fell across the floor, creating soft shadows that moved when the wind touched the curtains. Daniel lay still on the bed, watching her with tired eyes, as if he could not believe someone had come to see him. Tala moved calmly, her actions quiet and respectful. She placed her bag near the table and looked around the room. Everything told a story of loneliness. Dishes left unfinished, tools stacked without care, and papers scattered like forgotten thoughts. She did not speak right away. Instead, she filled a cup with water and handed it to him again, making sure he drank slowly. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice rough from disuse. He asked why she was there. His tone carried confusion more than suspicion. Few people visited him, and fewer still stayed long enough to help. Tala answered simply. She said she had heard he needed help, and she came because no one should face illness alone. Her words were gentle, without judgment. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, searching for a hidden reason behind her kindness, but he found none. Outside, the wind moved against the house, making the wooden walls creak softly. Inside, time seemed to slow. Tala began cleaning small things, moving empty containers aside, folding blankets, opening the window slightly to allow fresh air to enter. Each movement felt natural, as if she had done this many times before. Daniel watched her carefully. He was not used to someone caring for his face. For years he had lived without company, convinced that distance was easier than facing people. Now, seeing her move through his home with quiet respect stirred something unfamiliar in him. After a while, he asked her name. When she said Tala, he paused. The name seemed to bring memories to the surface, though he did not speak them aloud. His eyes shifted away, focusing on the ceiling as if trying to hide a sudden wave of emotion. The night passed slowly. Tala prepared a simple herbal drink using plants she carried with her. She helped him sit up, supporting his shoulders so he could drink more comfortably. Her touch was steady but careful, never forcing, always allowing him to move at his own pace. Daniel began speaking in short sentences, mostly about small things: the weather, the dry season, how the town had changed over the years. He avoided deeper subjects, as if they were locked behind a door he was afraid to open. Tala listened without interrupting. She understood that silence often spoke louder than questions. As dawn approached, faint light entered the room, revealing more details. The house looked older in daylight, its walls faded by years of sun and wind. Outside, desert hills stretched endlessly, reminding anyone who lived there how small they were compared to the land. Tala stepped outside briefly to breathe fresh air. The morning felt cool, and the sky held soft colors before the sun rose fully. She watched birds move across the horizon and listened to the quiet sounds of the desert waking. For a moment she wondered if she had made the right choice by coming. The weight of the situation felt heavy, yet something inside told her she was exactly where she needed to be. When she returned inside, Daniel was awake, staring toward the door as if afraid she might not come back. Relief showed on his face when he saw her again. He tried to hide it, but she noticed. The hours that followed moved gently. Tala prepared food using what she found in the kitchen, combining it with supplies she had brought. Daniel ate slowly, his strength limited, but he seemed calmer than before. They spoke more openly now, though still carefully. He told her about his ranch in earlier years, how he once worked long days with animals and land, how he believed hard work would solve every problem. His voice softened when he spoke about younger days, but sadness followed quickly, as if memories carried both warmth and regret. Tala listened, offering small responses that encouraged him to continue. She noticed how he sometimes paused mid-sentence, his eyes growing distant. It was clear he carried something deeper than ordinary regret. There were stories he wanted to share but did not yet trust himself to speak. Later, a truck passed on the road far away, its sound fading quickly. Daniel glanced toward the window, then looked back at Tala. He asked whether anyone else knew she had come. She shook her head. He seemed both relieved and uncertain, as if privacy allowed him to breathe more freely. The day grew warmer. Tala cleaned more of the house, organizing items so Daniel could reach what he needed easily. She washed dishes and arranged blankets to make him comfortable. Her movements showed patience, never rushing. At one point, Daniel asked why she continued helping him when others stayed away. The question carried genuine curiosity rather than doubt. Tala paused before answering. She said that every person deserved dignity, especially when life became difficult. She spoke about balance, about how kindness returned to the world in ways people could not always see. Her words stayed with him long after she finished speaking. As afternoon approached, Daniel began opening small pieces of his past. He spoke about conflicts between communities long ago, about misunderstandings that grew into deep divides. He avoided direct details, but his tone revealed guilt and sorrow. Tala listened quietly, sensing that these memories were connected to something important. The sun moved slowly across the sky, casting warm light through the window. Shadows shifted across the floor like silent companions. Time felt softer now, less heavy than when she first arrived. In the evening, Tala stepped outside again to gather dry wood for a small fire. The sky turned orange and gold, painting the desert with gentle color. She felt the weight of history around her, not only Daniel's story but the stories of the land itself. When she returned inside, Daniel seemed more restless. He looked at her, as if trying to decide whether to speak. His hands moved slightly, gripping the blanket. Finally, he said there were things he should have told someone long ago. His voice trembled, revealing fear beneath his words. Tala sat beside him quietly, allowing silence to guide the moment. She did not push him to speak faster than he was ready. He began describing a time many years earlier, a period when tension between settlers and Apache people ran deep. His words came slowly, broken by pauses. He spoke of choices he made, decisions that changed lives, and consequences he carried alone. He did not reveal everything yet, but the direction of his story suggested a hidden truth waiting beneath the surface. As night fell again, the room felt different, less empty, filled instead with shared presence. Tala sensed that trust was beginning to grow between them. Daniel seemed lighter, as if speaking even small pieces of his past relieved a burden he had carried too long. Before sleeping, Tala arranged blankets near a chair where she planned to rest. She did not leave, choosing to stay nearby in case he needed help during the night. Daniel watched her quietly, gratitude visible in his expression though he did not say it aloud. Outside, stars filled the sky once more. The desert remained calm, holding its silence like a promise. Inside the small house, two lives slowly connected through conversation, patience, and unspoken understanding. Tala knew that the true story had not yet been revealed, but she could feel it approaching, like a storm forming beyond the horizon, a secret waiting for the right moment to finally be heard. The second night in the small desert house felt heavier than the first. The air carried a quiet tension, as if something important waited just beneath the surface. Tala sensed it the moment she woke before sunrise. Daniel was already awake, staring toward the window where pale light slowly entered the room. His eyes looked distant, filled with thoughts he could no longer keep hidden. Tala moved quietly, preparing warm tea from the herbs she had brought. She noticed that Daniel seemed restless, shifting slightly under the blanket. His breathing was slower, more careful, as though each moment required more effort than before. When she handed him the cup, he accepted it with trembling hands. He looked at her for a long time, searching her face as if trying to measure whether he could trust her with something deeply personal. Tala did not rush him. She sat nearby, her presence calm and steady, allowing silence to create space for his thoughts. Outside, the desert woke slowly. Soft wind moved through dry grass, and the distant sound of birds echoed faintly. The peaceful morning felt almost opposite to the weight building inside the room. Daniel began speaking in a quiet voice. At first, his words wandered through small memories, places he had traveled, people he once knew, long days working under the sun. But gradually his tone changed. The warmth of storytelling faded, replaced by hesitation. He spoke about years when fear shaped many decisions, times when people misunderstood one another, when stories were passed down without truth, creating distance between communities. He admitted that he had lived through moments that left lasting scars, both on himself and on others. Tala listened without interruption. She understood that these stories were not easy for him to share. Each sentence felt like a step forward through heavy sand. Daniel paused often, struggling to continue. At one point he turned his head away, staring toward the wall as if afraid to meet her eyes. Finally, he said that there was one event he had never spoken about fully, a moment that changed his life and shaped the way people saw him forever. The room felt still as he began describing the past more clearly. Many years earlier, during a time of great tension between settlers and Apache families, a misunderstanding had led to fear spreading quickly. People reacted without thinking carefully, and decisions were made based on incomplete stories. Daniel admitted that he had been present during a difficult situation involving several families and a child whose fate became uncertain. His voice shook slightly as he continued. He explained that rumors about that day grew stronger over time, and people believed he had acted with cruelty or indifference. Those rumors followed him everywhere, slowly isolating him from others. Instead of defending himself, he chose silence, believing that speaking would only reopen wounds. Tala felt a mixture of emotions while listening: curiosity, sadness, and a deep awareness that the truth might be more complicated than anyone expected. She noticed how heavy the story felt for him, like a weight he had carried alone for too long. Daniel stopped speaking suddenly, closing his eyes as if exhausted. Tala waited patiently, allowing him to rest before continuing. She understood that revealing the past required strength, especially when memories carried pain. As the day moved forward, sunlight filled the room, warming the walls. Tala prepared food and encouraged him to eat small portions. Their conversation shifted briefly to lighter topics, giving him space to regain energy. Yet she sensed that the story was not finished. In the afternoon, Daniel asked her about her own past. His question came gently, without pressure. Tala shared small pieces, how she had grown up learning traditional ways, how she chose to live quietly after losing connections that once defined her life. She did not reveal everything, but enough to show him that she understood what it meant to carry hidden memories. Their shared vulnerability created a stronger bond between them. The distance that existed when she first arrived felt smaller now, replaced by a fragile trust. Later, as shadows lengthened across the floor, Daniel seemed ready to continue. He asked her to open a small wooden box resting on a shelf near the window. Tala brought it carefully and placed it beside him. Inside were old letters tied together with a thin cord, a faded photograph, and a carved object that reflected Apache craftsmanship. Tala held the carved piece gently, recognizing its cultural significance immediately. She looked at Daniel, silently asking permission to examine it more closely. He nodded slowly. He explained that the object had been entrusted to him many years ago, connected to the event he was finally describing. His voice grew softer as he revealed that the child involved in the story had been in danger, caught between fear and misunderstanding. While others believed he had turned away, he claimed that he had chosen to protect instead. The revelation surprised Tala. She felt the pieces of the story shifting into a new shape. For years, people in the town believed one version of events, yet Daniel suggested a different truth, one filled with hidden choices and sacrifices. He described how he had guided the child to safety, ensuring that harm did not reach them. However, circumstances forced him to remain silent afterward. Speaking openly might have caused more conflict at the time, and he believed that silence would allow wounds to heal naturally. Instead, silence allowed rumors to grow stronger, slowly turning him into a figure people avoided. Tala felt a deep wave of emotion. She understood how easily truth could be lost when people chose comfort over understanding. The story began connecting with fragments of history she had heard from elders, though she could not yet see the full picture. As evening approached, Daniel's strength faded again. His breathing grew heavier, and he rested more frequently between sentences. Tala adjusted his blankets and prepared tea to help him relax. She encouraged him to save energy, but he seemed determined to continue sharing before it became too late. He admitted that fear had kept him silent for too long. Fear of judgment, fear of causing pain, and fear that no one would believe him. Yet seeing Tala sitting beside him, listening without anger, gave him the courage to continue. The room filled with quiet understanding as he described how guilt shaped his life. Even though he believed he had done the right thing, the absence of truth left him isolated. He avoided the town, avoided friendships, and convinced himself that loneliness was the price he deserved. Tala felt compassion growing inside her. She realized that this story was not only about one man's secret, but about the way communities sometimes choose simple answers instead of complex truths. Night arrived again, bringing cool air through the open window. Stars appeared slowly, shining against the dark sky. Tala remained beside him, listening as he shared the final pieces he was ready to reveal that day. Though the full truth had not yet emerged, she sensed that the most important part was still waiting. Before sleeping, Daniel looked at her with gratitude and relief. For the first time since she arrived, his expression carried a sense of peace, as if speaking had lifted part of the burden he carried for decades. Tala rested nearby, watching the quiet movement of shadows across the walls. She understood that the coming days would reveal more than either of them expected. The past was beginning to unfold, and with it came the possibility of healing, not only for Daniel, but for the stories that shaped the entire community. Outside, the desert remained silent, holding its secrets patiently. Inside the small house, the truth moved closer to the surface, waiting for the moment when it would finally change everything they thought they knew. Morning light entered the small house slowly. touching the wooden walls with a soft golden glow. Tala woke before the sun rose fully, listening to the quiet rhythm of Daniel's breathing. The night had been calm, but she sensed that something had changed. The air felt different, as if the truth shared the previous evening had opened a door that could no longer be closed. Daniel's strength looked weaker than before. His movements were slower, and his voice carried a fragile softness. Still, his eyes seemed clearer, as though releasing pieces of his past had brought him relief. Tala prepared warm tea and helped him sit up carefully. He thanked her quietly, his gratitude showing in small gestures rather than long words. The bond between them had grown naturally over the past days, shaped by trust and understanding rather than obligation. After drinking, Daniel asked her to bring the wooden box again. Tala placed it beside him, and he looked at it for a long time before opening it fully. Inside, the letters and small objects rested like memories waiting to speak. He handed her one of the letters, asking her to read it aloud. The paper felt old and fragile. The writing was faded but still clear enough to understand. The letter described a moment from years ago, a time when fear and confusion had pushed people to make quick judgments. It spoke about a child whose safety had become uncertain, and about someone who stepped forward quietly to protect without expecting recognition. As Tala read, she began realizing that Daniel's version of events carried more depth than anyone in town had believed. The letter was written by another witness who thanked him for choosing compassion during a moment when many chose distance. Daniel watched her reaction carefully. He explained that he kept the letters hidden because he did not want to appear as though he was defending himself. He believed that people needed time to heal, and he hoped that truth would find its way naturally. Instead, years passed and silence turned into misunderstanding. Tala felt a deep sadness for the loneliness he had endured. She imagined how heavy it must have felt to live with people's assumptions while knowing a different truth inside. The day continued quietly. Tala cleaned parts of the house again, making small improvements that brought light into the space. She opened another window, allowing fresh air to move freely. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, calm and patient, as if reminding them that time moved forward regardless of human struggles. Later, Daniel spoke more openly about the past. He described how he found the child alone during a dangerous moment. While others hesitated, he chose to guide the child to safety, protecting them until help arrived. However, confusion afterward caused people to believe he had been responsible for the situation rather than helping resolve it. He admitted that he felt too tired to argue against the rumors. Instead, he withdrew from society, focusing on work and isolation. Over time, distance became habit, and habit became loneliness. Tala listened carefully, feeling the weight of his story settle inside her. She recognized pieces of cultural misunderstanding that often shaped history, moments where silence allowed stories to grow without balance. As afternoon arrived, a car passed slowly on the distant road. Tala noticed it from the window and wondered whether news about Daniel's condition might eventually reach more people. She felt uncertain about how the community would respond if the truth came to light. Daniel seemed to sense her thoughts. He said softly that he never expected forgiveness or recognition. All he wanted was for someone to know what truly happened before he left this world. His words carried relief, as though simply sharing the story had already changed something inside him. Tala reassured him that truth mattered, even when it arrived late. She spoke about how stories shaped future generations, and how honesty allowed healing to begin. Her voice remained calm, but her words carried strength. In the evening, they looked through more items from the box. One photograph showed a younger Daniel standing beside a group of people near the desert hills. Among them was an Apache elder, holding the same carved object Tala had seen earlier. The image confirmed that Daniel once shared respectful connections with Apache families, contradicting the rumors that painted him as distant or uncaring. The discovery deepened Tala's understanding. She realized that history was rarely simple. People often remembered events through emotion rather than fact, allowing incomplete stories to define entire lives. As the sun began to set, warm light filled the room, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Daniel's energy faded again, but his expression remained calm. He seemed lighter, as though speaking had freed him from years of silence. They shared a quiet meal together, speaking about smaller topics, desert storms, animals that roamed nearby, and memories of simple joys. These moments created balance, preventing the story from becoming too heavy.
After dark, Daniel asked Tala to promise something.
He wanted her to decide when and how to share the truth with others, but only if she believed it would bring understanding rather than conflict. He trusted her judgment more than his own. Tala felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She understood that carrying someone's story required care and respect. She agreed gently, knowing that the decision would not be easy. The night grew quiet. This is why we make our bed. The night grew quiet. Outside, stars filled the sky again, shining brightly above the desert. Inside, the room felt warmer than before, shaped by shared trust. Daniel rested more deeply that night, his breathing slow but peaceful. Tala sat nearby, reflecting on everything she had learned. She thought about the town, about the people who avoided him, and about how quickly assumptions could shape reality. She wondered how many other stories remained hidden beneath silence, waiting for someone willing to listen. Hours passed, and the soft sound of wind moved against the walls. Tala felt both sadness and gratitude. Sadness for the years Daniel spent alone, and gratitude that she had arrived in time to hear his truth. Before sleep claimed her, she looked at the wooden box resting near the bed. It held more than objects. It held proof that stories could change when people chose understanding over judgment. Outside, the desert remained calm, holding its ancient silence. Inside the small house, the final pieces of truth prepared to emerge, bringing them closer to a moment that would reshape not only Daniel's legacy but also the way the community remembered its own past. The final morning arrived quietly, almost gently, as if the desert itself understood that something important was coming to an end. Soft light filled the small house, touching every corner that Tala had cleaned over the past days. The room felt calmer now, less heavy than when she first entered, but there was also a deep stillness that made her heart feel tight. Daniel rested peacefully, his breathing slow and shallow. Tala sat nearby, watching him carefully. She had learned the rhythm of his breathing, the way his hands moved when he felt discomfort, and the small expressions that revealed his thoughts even when he said nothing. Over the past days, their connection had grown stronger than either of them expected. She prepared warm tea and opened the window slightly so fresh air could enter. The morning breeze carried the smell of dry earth and distant flowers. Outside, birds crossed the sky, moving freely across the wide horizon. Daniel opened his eyes slowly. For a moment he looked confused, as if unsure where he was. Then he saw Tala sitting beside him, and a small smile appeared on his face. He thanked her quietly, not only for the tea but for staying when others did not. Their conversation that morning was soft and slow. He spoke about simple memories, riding horses across open land, watching storms roll across the hills, and moments of peace he found in silence. His voice carried a sense of acceptance as though he had made peace with his past. Tala listened carefully, feeling both gratitude and sadness. She knew that time was short, and every word he spoke felt important. Later, Daniel asked her to bring the wooden box again. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, touching each item with care. He handed her the carved object once more, and said it should return to people who would understand its meaning. He trusted her to know what to do. He also gave her the letters and photograph, asking her to keep them safe until the right moment arrived. His voice carried relief, as though sharing the responsibility allowed him to let go of the weight he had carried alone. Tala accepted everything with respect. She promised that she would honor his story carefully, never using it for attention, but only to bring understanding where misunderstanding had existed. As the day moved forward, Daniel's strength faded further. He rested more often, speaking only in short sentences, yet his eyes remained peaceful, no longer filled with the fear or tension she had seen when she first arrived. During the afternoon, clouds gathered in the distance, soft and gray against the blue sky. The changing weather felt symbolic, as if nature itself was marking the end of a journey. Daniel asked her to sit closer. He spoke slowly. sharing final thoughts about forgiveness. He said that people often carry regret longer than necessary because they fear being judged. He wished he had trusted someone earlier, but he also believed that everything happened in its own time. Tala held his hand gently, offering silent support. She felt honored to be chosen as the person who heard his truth. As evening approached, the light in the room turned golden. Shadows stretched across the floor, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Daniel's breathing became slower, more uneven. Tala stayed beside him, speaking softly when he opened his eyes, reminding him that he was not alone. In his final moments, he looked at her with deep gratitude. Though his voice was barely audible, he told her that meeting her had given him peace. Then he closed his eyes, and the room grew still. Tala remained seated for a long time, allowing silence to settle naturally. Outside, the desert continued its quiet rhythm, unaffected by human endings, yet somehow honoring them. Afterward, she stepped outside, breathing deeply as the sky turned darker. Stars appeared one by one, filling the horizon with gentle light. She felt sadness but also a calm understanding that his story had reached its natural conclusion. The following days were filled with responsibility. Tala contacted people in town, informing them of Daniel's passing with respect and simplicity. Some reacted with surprise, others with quiet reflection. A few expressed regret that they had not visited him sooner. The town gathered for a small farewell. Many arrived out of curiosity rather than connection, but the atmosphere remained respectful. Tala stood quietly at the edge, observing how people spoke about Daniel. She heard old rumors repeated, mixed with uncertainty. After the gathering, she knew the time had come to share the truth. She invited a small group of elders and community members to listen privately. Sitting together under the open sky, she carefully explained what Daniel had revealed, showing the letters and photograph as proof. She spoke without blame, focusing only on understanding. At first, silence followed her words. People exchanged uncertain looks, processing information that challenged long-held beliefs. Gradually, questions emerged, not angry, but thoughtful. Some elders remembered pieces of history that supported the story. Others expressed regret for judging too quickly. The atmosphere shifted slowly. Instead of conflict, there was reflection. Over the following weeks, conversations spread throughout the town. People began reconsidering their memories, realizing how easily misunderstandings could shape someone's life. Daniel's story became a reminder of the importance of listening before judging. Tala did not seek attention. She returned to her quiet routines, allowing the story to speak for itself. Yet something had changed within the community. People greeted her more warmly, no longer seeing her as distant or mysterious, but as someone who brought truth and compassion when it was needed most. One morning she walked toward the desert hills carrying the carved object. She placed it in a sacred location known to Apache tradition, returning it to the land where it belonged. The act felt like closing a circle that had remained open for decades. Standing there, watching the sunrise paint the sky with soft colors, she reflected on everything that had happened. A man once believed to be alone and misunderstood had finally been heard. A story once hidden had found light. The desert wind moved gently around her, carrying away the last traces of sorrow. Tala understood that healing did not erase the past, but allowed people to see it more clearly. As she walked back toward town, she felt a quiet strength inside her. The final secret had changed not only how people remembered Daniel, but also how they understood one another. Life continued, as it always did, but something invisible had shifted, a deeper awareness that every person carried unseen stories, and sometimes all it took to change everything was one person willing to listen.